So, if you know me, you know that I love to watch TV, and one of my favorite television shows is Grey's Anatomy. And one particular episode always comes to mind for me. It's the episode where Dr. Bailey has a heart attack. In the episode, we have to watch this highly educated, intelligent, well trained, and award winning surgeon fight for an accurate diagnosis as she experiences symptoms of a heart attack. All that hinders her race and gender, and a medical diagnosis that is not tailored to people like her. But this is not a one and done experience, and unfortunately, unlike Dr. Bailey, many other individuals that experience this sort of discrimination do not have the same strong education and experience that enables her to fight for her rights and accurate diagnosis in the ER. Today, I want to talk to you about medical diagnosis as an institution. Diagnosticians and healthcare workers play a vital role in assessing disease, injury, and illness across a slew of intersecting groups and identities. It is important to discuss because marginalized people are experiencing higher death and infection rates because they are not being diagnosed correctly. This has to do with assumed gender and sexuality within an appointment, and also the racialized medical institution, and even ethnic barriers that limit access. Diagnosis varies across time, space, and the individual giving the diagnosis. And it also constructs and perpetuates misdiagnosis and medical ideas on the basis of race, gender, and class as well. While there is no research on how class directly impacts diagnosis, class does dictate how many options for diagnosis an individual has, such as second and third opinions. There's also a common idea that people of lower socioeconomic class are also showing up for addictive drugs, which also leads to the misdiagnosis because of the association of drug use and poverty. Now, mistrust by POCs for white doctors, which make up nearly 88% of physicians, has been created by medical experts hiding behind racist ideals that people of color were untrustworthy, sexually promiscuous, or had an instinct of submission. This has paved the way for not only negligence toward POCs and Black individuals specifically in disease research, but has also created a long term misdiagnosis as doctors hold these biases, whether implicit or overt. Physicians who are unaware of their own racial bias and medical folklore may also assume Black skin is endowed with natural protection against skin cancer, and that people of color experience symptoms because of accelerated aging and not attributed to disease, that Black women do not experience the symptoms of menopause, and that Black patients are unusually susceptible to dementia, none of which are true. These all lead to misdiagnoses that impact POCs and other ethnicities at a higher variation than white individuals, as well as doctors do not take the time to understand and identify public health disparities regarding different races and ethnic backgrounds. This combines to create doctor avoiding individuals that are also very high in pain tolerance of different races and ethnicities, and a white physician who chooses not to diagnose them as carefully as whites with similar symptoms. I think it's also really important to understand how race, sexuality, and gender work together to oppress individuals that are being diagnosed. Women are less likely to receive and wait longer for pain medication, feel dismissed as hysterical or hypochondriacal when they describe their symptoms, and receive wrong and delayed diagnosis as a result. The fact that sexuality is assumed upon entering an appointment also plays distinct role in diagnosis because heterosexual activity is assumed. And as we have seen from the AIDS pandemic, while groups may experience higher statistics around contracting certain illnesses, the idea that symptoms and diseases are only paired to one distinct sexuality or gender can be harmful to the entire population. So let's say that we overlap all of these identities. A lesbian woman of color enters the doctor's office with pelvic pain. White, heterosexual, male perspective in the medical environment might assume the nature of Black women and their sex lives. This plays a role in diagnosis because it emphasizes the racial and gendered construction of disease. Gynecologists would almost automatically diagnose a Black woman with symptoms of endometriosis as having pelvic inflammatory disease, a disease in which the underlying cause is triggered by increased sexual activity or sexual promiscuity, with the reasoning being that an assumption that Black women are sexually promiscuous. Mixed diagnosis like this could be fatal and all based upon the racial and gendered bias of the healthcare worker. Now, we also need to address the power that healthcare workers hold in an institution like medical diagnosis. When being told that nothing is wrong with them, patients take it upon themselves to understand that diseases are not the source of their pain, but that their identities within their bodies are. Being left with an inaccurate diagnosis or no diagnosis at all leaves individuals with the perception that the only thing wrong with them is their sexual orientation, gender, race, or class that society is already telling them are wrong. This spotlights a lot of the power that these healthcare workers have as they are trained professionals given the task of investigating and healing their patients no matter what the background. When healthcare workers don't take the time to thoroughly take into account the differences and biases they hold in relation to their patients, as well as taking the time to understand these differences and how they might impact their health, they hinder the agency they have in properly helping and supporting these people. They could take agency by understanding the culture in which these individuals are coming from, utilizing class-based research to understand high rates of certain diseases within an area that might be impacting their patient, or creating judgment-free spaces for their patients to talk freely about their class, gender, race, or sexuality that might give physicians more insight as to what their symptoms might be. Stratification should also not be ignored in this instance, as well, since individuals are sick and suffering and are in no place to work or contribute to the means of production. Having improper proper medical diagnosis can leave individuals bedridden for days, weeks, or even months as they await proper treatment that isn't coming because of misdiagnosis based and biased. I hope this video has given you some good insight as to how medical diagnosis acts as an institution. And remember, you shouldn't have to be a doctor to get a correct diagnosis.